Hey everybody, 8-Bit Josh here, and welcome to my little time-lapse video here showing how I built my little floating island zoo I made for the Oceania Pack DLC, which if you want to check out my sort of overview video of that, I'll put that up in the corner of the video where I just go over the DLC as well as the 1.15 free update. But yeah, as I was building this zoo, I was like, I should just record this and do it as a time lapse. That way, if anybody's interested in kind of seeing how I did it, figure why not? Plus more content. More content's always good. But yeah, so this, I started with the, I used the Diorama mode, and I think originally my plan was I was just gonna do like a regular diorama for the zoo. If you've watched my past like overview videos of the DLCs, the last one I did for the arid animal pack, I did like this like circular zoo with like this perfect circle shape, and I thought that was interesting, and I was like, well, what can I do that is, I guess, just as interesting but also different? And I was like, well, why don't I do something with the diorama? And then I was like, well, I already did something with the dioramas actually when that mode got added to the game. That was for, I forget which animal pack, but it was for an animal pack which has 9 animals, and I did 9 different dioramas for each animal. And so I was like, okay, I've already done that, I don't want to do that again. And then I was like, oh, what if I make like floating islands, because that's just a little different. I don't think I've really seen just like a sort of collection of floating islands, but the diorama mode definitely makes it more feasible to do that kind of thing, because that way you don't have to worry about having like the big land mass. Like, you could always make floating islands on a regular map, but you would always have the you'd have the land below you. But the diorama mode is nice because this way it's literally just floating islands. The other thing I started to do is, like, I was going to make each island its own habitat for each of the 5 animals. And my original thought was I wasn't going to put like any paths or guests in it. Then I was like, oh wait, one of the new features is the viewing dome, so I have to have guests in the zoo so that I can show off the new viewing domes. So then that kind of changed my plans a little bit. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to add paths, and if I'm gonna have these separate floating islands, then I'm gonna need paths that connect to each island so that the guests can get to each one. So making sure I got like all of the each island sort of leveled and lined up with the paths. I have this thing which I just did where to make sure that the paths are even and the steps like going down, I don't have that that weird thing where there's not enough room to do steps, and the game kind of creates that like really sort of shallow ramp. I don't like that, so I do this thing where using a combination of like the tunneling option and the flattened terrain option on paths, I can use that to make sure that I get the terrain exactly level with where the paths are, so the paths are always even throughout like the entire zoo. So like if I on this side of the island, if I'm doing like the 4 meter length sections, and I do 2 sections down, on the other side of the map or on the island, it's going to be 2 sections going up. So that way it's always even and everything always lines up. Maybe that's the OCD that I have, I don't know, it could be, but I just like it when those things are even. The other thing I realized is like, what, even though the bottom of the islands aren't really going to be looked at very, very much, I still wanted them to look more interesting in that they kind of like, I wanted to almost look like the islands were like lifted out from like another piece, like like the main land or something like that. I didn't want them to just be like a completely flat bottom. So that's why I kind of created like sort of the like reverse slope. So I wanted everything to kind of like meet in the middle. I don't know. I just wanted it to be a little bit more interesting, like I said, rather than just a flat island. But I will say using the stamp tool there makes making islands way easier, because you can just kind of place them around and then you can just sort of carve the terrain however you want. So it makes, if you want to do islands like this, it makes that really easy, in my opinion. You can see right there, I was doing it again using the method to make sure that my paths all even and everything. The other thing I wanted to do, which you kind of get shots of where the penguin island is over there. I wanted a underwater viewing spot for the penguins, and I thought it would be kind of cool if the viewing spot for that was actually on the other island. So that's kind of what that little section is up top there. You can see the water there, and the guests actually will stand there and watch the penguins when the penguins are swimming around. So it's not too far away. I was a little bit worried that maybe that path was going to be a little too far away from the water there, but it's actually not. And the guests do stand there and watch the penguins, which is really cool. There's me doing more of the underside of the islands. I also, I'm painting it with the rock texture. That's the other thing, is I wanted the underside of all the islands to have like the rocky texture rather than like the sand or dirt texture, because like I said, I wanted it to have that look that they were like sort of lifted out from the ground below. Maybe these islands are like so high in the sky that they're like in the cloud line. Who knows? And then one of my other favorite things here is decorating water. I think that might be one of my favorite things. Well, it is one of my favorite things. I don't know if it's my most favorite thing to do, but it's definitely one of my favorite things to do, is to decorate water, like not only around the water but underwater as well. I love these faux rocks. Maybe I use these more than I should, but they just look so good. And because they're flexi color, you can essentially make them match whatever theme that you've got going on there with your zoo. That building there is actually just a prefab I placed down. That's where the entrance and guest spawner is. I actually took, I want to say that it was from the research building, the staff research building, and I just took the research building part of it out, and just put the zoo entrance and guest spawner in there, which works out nicely. The other thing I wanted to do was I wanted to have, since the islands are kind of surrounding the main island and they're all different heights, I thought it would look cool to have waterfalls coming off of the main island to the other islands. So that's what I did here. This one I actually made sort of like a little mini cave, like maybe the water was coming from underground. The other waterfall, that I have like the little creek there, so that kind of looks like where the water's coming from. But I was like, well, I don't have like the creek on the other side, so how am I gonna make it look like the water, like where's the water coming from? So I was like, I'll do like a sort of little, like under, like a little cave, so the water's coming from underground. I was like, yeah, that works good enough for me. That's fine. Not everything needs explanation. This is me trying to I was trying to fuss with the viewing dome entrance, because it has to connect to the habitat barrier. I didn't really plan that out too well, honestly. I could have done a little bit better, but it worked out. It was a little finicky at first, but I eventually got it. Yeah, so I'm decorating here. This is obviously for the little penguins. That's actually what they're called. They're not just, I'm not just saying they're little penguins because they're little. They're called little penguins. But I did learn the viewing dome, you can place them underwater, but you can't place them underwater when there's water there. So if you're gonna do a, an underwater area like this, just make sure you place the viewing dome before you put your water in, because the water in this game is very finicky. If you're a long time player like myself, you already know that, and sometimes you get your water level right exactly where you want it, and then if you change something, it messes that all up, and sometimes it's hard to get the water level back where it is, or like the habitat barrier. Sometimes getting all those things to work together is not always the easiest. So just make sure you place your viewing dome before you place your water, and it'll just make everything a lot easier for you. Of course, I had to place the bubbles there because it's such a neat little fun effect. And then here I'm actually making the actual habitat for the quokka, which is just a lot of fun to say. I will say, when I build these habitats, I usually do like little offshoots, so that way when people are viewing the animals, they're not blocking traffic for the people who are walking by. Because this section, especially when the zoo is open, it's very congested with people, but that's okay. This zoo is just for like what I call like a showcase zoo, where I'm just mostly showing the animals and whatever new features came about with the the free updates. I'm not necessarily trying to manage these zoos when I make them. I think the other thing I realized after I already started making this whole zoo, and it was too late to start over, but there's they added a new biome. Well, it's an existing biome, but for under the temperate biome, you can now choose Oceania as one of the areas in the biome. And I didn't realize that until after the fact, and I already started because I picked tropical, but it still works out. Tropical is definitely my favorite. I saw there's all kinds of new foliage that looked very tropical to me, so that's why I ended up picking that. But I don't know, if you know me, tropical designs are my favorite. I love doing like kind of thick, lush, jungly looking zoos, and just putting tons and tons of foliage everywhere. That's just, I don't know, that's my bread and butter. That's my favorite thing to do, and favorite way to decorate. The last zoo I did was the Horizon Zero Dawn themed zoo, which was in a desert, but I did desert with like a tropical theme, and that, man, I had so much fun. It was just a whole zoo of tropical theming and designing. It was so good. If you're interested in seeing that, I've got a whole series, like 20 some episodes of that, or I also have a walkthrough tour video. If you want to check that out, I think it's actually like the longest video on my channel. I think it's like an hour and 20 minutes long, but it's a humongous zoo, and it just took a long time to walk through it. I haven't actually put out my follow-up project to the name of that zoo is Meridian Springs. It's named after an area in the game Horizon Zero Dawn. It's called Meridian, but I haven't put out my follow-up project yet. I haven't started, and I actually have 3 videos recorded for it, but I just haven't put it out yet. It's just one of those things. A lot of times when I have a big project, I need a little bit of a break from playing a zoo. Mostly just, I want to make sure that I have the creativeness going and all that stuff. And so sometimes after a big project, like that one was over a year to make, I needed a little break, and I wanted to make sure that I get all that content out and ready, rather than like record a video, put it out, and then I didn't want to like stop. So but I will be putting that out probably fairly soon, as I'm excited to get that project out for you all. But yeah, this is my Oceania Pack DLC sort of showcase zoo. This is up on the Steam Workshop if you want to download it and just check it out for yourself. But yeah, as always, thanks so much for watching, everybody. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell icon too. That way you get notified whenever I post new videos. But thanks so much for watching. I'll see you on the next video.